All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot of information to cover today. And before we start with the good morning, I do want to really thank the staff members that have worked on putting this hearing together. Austin did a phenomenal job, and I want to thank Hank also. Really appreciate all your work. So welcome to the joint oversight hearing on cybersecurity. Much has happened in the last year in the world of cybersecurity, including major breaches, elevated public debate, as well as policy necessary to move California forward. These issues are continually moving out of the abstract and into our homes, our phones, and into many aspects of our daily lives. When I discuss cybersecurity with people in my district, there's a recognition that the issue permeates our lives. Most are shocked to learn how much information is generated by their daily activities, who controls and uses that information, and how it can impact them. As I'm sure you have heard, just last week, the IT network of a hospital in Hollywood was compromised, putting patient security and potentially their lives at risk. The hospital was forced to pay a ransom to regain information necessary to care for their patients. Thankfully, a larger crisis was averted, but the bad guys won in this case. These cyber-related expenses are becoming the cost of doing business. The typical U.S. company in the energy, finance, communications, defense, or healthcare sectors now average $15 million in annual impact from cybercrime. And over the last few years, the Department of Homeland Security has responded to an average of 250 incidents on industrial control systems per year. Because of the sensitive nature of this issue, not all incidents are reported. Breaches of key state departments, even legislative offices here in the Capitol, have become regular occurrences. This hearing will focus on what the state is doing to address the challenge, and if the steps that have been taken are an appropriate course of action for the long-term interests of the state. This is an important approach because many of the cybersecurity problems we face today were the product of poor decisions made 10 to 20 years ago. I would like to thank Governor Brown for the actions that were taken last year. Through collaboration on legislation and his executive order, the state is moving in the right direction. But much uncertainty remains, and like all types of security policies, it is important to view this as an ongoing process. There have been multiple bills introduced in both houses of the legislature that will address some of the issues that we are discussing today. Last year, we held hearings that detailed the roles and responsibilities of each of the departments that will testify today. In sum, the governing structure around California's cybersecurity is disjointed, and accountability seems to be falling through the cracks. When it comes to government, we have been entrusted with massive amounts of sensitive data, including the personal information of our residents, and we need to make sure we are doing everything we can to keep that information secure. When it comes to the private sector, several industries have proactively taken steps to protect their customers' data, but many have not. Depending on the function of a business and the amount of sensitive information controlled, there is a reasonable standard of security that should be expected. That standard is currently being litigated in federal courts. Regrettably, the same accountability for a security standard does not exist in state government today. As the audit last year pointed out, we are failing in this mission, and our state agencies collectively have surpassed an acceptable amount of risk. The purpose of this hearing is to find out more on how to mitigate that risk, what resources are needed, and how we can do better. We have a great opportunity to improve cybersecurity in California with the governor's executive order, which is the most ambitious approach to this challenge of any state in the country. Both the legislature and the public are becoming more informed and active on this issue. My goal for this committee has been to identify ways we can mobilize our resources and improve the state's posture, and most importantly, bring this issue to the forefront. I am confident that the process has begun, but the state needs to do more to maintain a sense of urgency. On that note, I'm looking forward to developing a more formal working relationship with the administration on cybersecurity going forward. Thank you all for being here today. And now I would like to ask my Chair Ed Chow, if he has any comments.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair Irwin. As chair of the Privacy and Consumer Protection Committee, cybersecurity is a matter of great concern for me as well as for many of my colleagues, because the stakes are so high if we get it wrong. This is not a theoretical risk. As mentioned, it's just the last few weeks, we've seen online criminals holding a hospital's computer network hostage unless the hospital paid a ransom. We've also seen hacktivists threatening to disrupt the city of Sacramento's computer system unless certain political demands were met. Yet, a more significant cyber attack, whether against state networks or privately owned component of our critical infrastructure, like the power grid, could do much more damage. Now, these attacks can interrupt communication system, put personal information into the hands of identity thieves, disrupt government services, cripple critical infrastructure, and potentially even take lives. With so much at stake, it is extremely imperative that the state do all it can to make sure that our networks are secure, resilient, and also competently managed. Now, against that backdrop, let me say that I was deeply disappointed to read the state auditor's August 2015 high-risk report assessing the California Department of Technology's failed oversight of the state's information technology. To me, that demonstrates a complete lack of accountability on multiple levels. We will hear from the auditor shortly, but she has found that the vast majority of state government entities surveyed were not compliant with existing information security requirements. And most of these entities lacked adequate plans for interruptions or disasters. The department was also criticized for not providing effective guidance or follow-up. In fact, 37 out of 41 state entities that self-certified in 2014 that they were fully compliant were not, in fact, compliant. And at least 18 entities didn't certify their compliance for 5 years or more with absolutely no consequences. Even worse, 30 of the 38 non-compliant entities reported that they submitted remediation plans to the department, but only 4 of them said that the department followed up with them. And many important state entities were not even included in a survey, and 20 of them refused to participate. Now, this simply cannot continue. California must have a robust cybersecurity strategy. But a good strategy won't matter if our state agencies cannot execute on basic cybersecurity practices. And if our state agencies are to succeed in their endeavors, the BSA audit shows that there must be vigorous and sustained oversight from the legislature. I expect today's joint hearing to reacquaint ourselves with the challenges that we face in building and implementing an effective cybersecurity strategy for California. I also hope to hear about what we're doing right, the progress we've made in the last year, and also an honest and forthright discussion of what needs to change to ensure that our state networks remain safe and secure for the benefit of all Californians. So with that, let me turn it back over to Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chow. And do we have committee members that would like to comment? Chu? Mr. Chu?
Just a brief comment. First of all, I want to thank the chairs for holding this hearing and also thank all the members of the public who have come on this topic that I think many of us just thought a few short years ago were really the stuff of movies and science fiction. But we are reading in the daily papers about the types of breaches that should concern and frankly horrify us all. I also want to thank the chairs because I don't think you pulled any punches in your opening statements detailing what we have all known about failures in our system, how disjointed it is, and how much accountability we need more of. As someone who years ago, before I became an elected official, started and ran a tech company, it is my perspective that what should be a 21st century set of systems and a 21st century government is stuck in 1999. And I know that there are many folks who are thinking about how we move that forward. But in addition to hearing from our governmental agencies, I would like to hear suggestions and policy solutions from external stakeholders, those of you who are experts in this field, to tell us what we ought to be doing. And I look forward to working with our colleagues to hopefully moving forward policies that ensure that what we are reading on the front pages of the newspapers will not be happening to the state of California.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Does anybody else want to make a comment? All right, then we will call up our first speaker, Elaine Howell from the State Auditor's Office. And I would like to say to all the speakers, we expect this to be a very full hearing, a lot of information. So we're hoping that you will narrow the talking part and allow us discussions, because we want to make sure that we move everything along and get it all in. So welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. It's on. Thank you, Madam Chair, Chair Chow. My name's Elaine Howell, California State Auditor. With me to my left is Michelle Bauer. Michelle was the audit manager. She's in charge of our information technology audit unit in the State Auditor's Office. And to my right is Ben Ward. Ben was one of the supervisors on the project. What I intend to do, very high level, just a few bullet points as far as what our key themes were in the audit report. We also, the sergeant should be handing out a few graphics that were in the audit report. We think those graphics really illustrate the issues that we identified. So Ms. Bauer and Mr. Ward will step you through just those three graphics. So I think we'll be able to keep our comments relatively brief. And we certainly can give you an update on the recommendations that we've made and the status of the Department of Technology and the entities that we audited their progress in implementing recommendations. So the key issues, Mr. Chow stole some of my thunder, which is terrific, because the key things that we identified in this audit report were we wanted to know the current condition of state agencies and their ability to comply with all the security standards that are in the State Administrative Manual and the State Information Management Manual as well. So we had done a few audits, and my IT folks, when we're conducting an audit of a particular entity, will look at databases, and we kept seeing issues at individual entities that we audited. So we decided to embark on this high-risk audit and really take a broader view and look at a variety, as many state agencies as we could, using the survey. And as Mr. Chow indicated, many of those entities had actually certified, and they are required to do this on an annual basis to the Department of Technology, that they were complying with all of the standards. When we surveyed those same agencies, as he indicated, many of those who had certified compliance back in 2014 actually told us in our survey, no, we are not fully compliant. And there's a reason for that distinction, and we can talk about that if necessary. I think there was a difference in how we crafted our survey versus how the Department of Technology crafts its survey. But clearly, the vast majority of the agencies that we surveyed are indicating that they are not complying with all of these standards. They also, as Mr. Chow and others have mentioned in their opening comments, another issue is the oversight provided by technology and any guidance and training provided by technology. Many of these state agencies absolutely want to do the right thing and protect the data that is in their systems, but many of them, in response to our survey, indicated they don't fully understand all of the standards, how to go about meeting many of those standards, and when we asked them about the training and guidance that was being provided by the Department of Technology, they felt it was not sufficient. It wasn't really helping them to understand what they needed to do to really tighten up the controls around the information systems in California. So there were key themes. Clearly, we wanted to get a status of the state, and of those 77 entities, as we indicated, only 4 stated out of 77 that responded to our survey. We surveyed 101 entities. As Mr. Chow indicated, some did not respond to our survey, even though we gave them ample time to respond to the questions in the survey. We reminded them on multiple occasions that we needed this information. That was really important, and that's quite frankly why I published the list of the 20 entities, so that the legislature and the administration and others would know these are the entities that did not respond. But the current condition is that many entities are not fully complying with all the standards. The Department of Technology needs to do a better job in oversight. I think, Ms. Irwin, your bill is certainly a step in the right direction as far as requiring those annual assessments so that the Department of Technology and the agencies can work together to try to tighten up those individual controls that are weak. And then guidance, really strengthening the training protocols that are out there, reaching out. We were surprised to hear from the Department of Technology that they hadn't surveyed agencies to really try to understand what their perspective was as far as, do they understand the standards? Do they feel the training that they're receiving is sufficient? I think the bottom line is agencies really do want to protect the data. They just aren't sure how to go about doing that. So those were the key issues from my perspective. As we also mentioned in the audit report, there are some entities that we didn't look at. The constitutional offices, we focused on entities that were under the purview of the governor's office, so we intend to do some additional work in our high-risk area as far as looking at the constitutional offices and some other agencies to make sure that they either follow the state standards or follow some form of information technology standards to make sure their databases are fully protected. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Bauer, and she can step you through at least one or two of the figures, and then Mr. Ward will step you through the last figure. And I think those three figures really will give you the gist of the concerns that we had, not only as a result of the survey, but we went out and visited. The first figure you look at that Ms. Bauer will step you through is where we went to 5 agencies and really did some more detailed testing far beyond what was in the survey that we sent out to 100 agencies.
So for the record, I'm Michelle Bauer, and I'm the manager of the IT audit unit at the State Auditor's Office. So as the State Auditor indicated, our main theme for this report was assessing the state of the state's IT controls. And so for this, we did it in 2 parts. We did a control review at 5 entities, and we also surveyed state entities. The control review focused on 5 entities that were of diverse size and responsibility. We also looked for entities that collected, stored, or maintained personally identifiable information or protected health information or confidential financial information, and in some cases, other sensitive information. And for these 5 entities, the criteria that we used was we looked at 17 of the 64 standards that are in Chapter 5300 of the State Administrative Manual. Those 17 sections represent the basis of our review and the 5 key control areas that we focused on. Those areas were information asset management, so basically, what do you have? And what level of security do these assets require? We also looked at risk management. So once you understand what assets you have, what risks are associated with those assets. And then we looked at the area of information security program management, which is where they develop a plan to address the risks that they've identified. These 3 areas are considered the foundation of an information system control structure. In addition to these 3 areas, we also looked at incident management and technology recovery. I'd like to direct your attention to page 2 of the handout. And on page 2 is table 2, which we're presenting our results in this format. In here you can see we looked at the 5 departments, and they are labeled A through E because we have decided that we should not disclose their names. And as you will notice, we found weaknesses in each of the 5 agencies that we reviewed. Only 1 entity was fully compliant in any of the areas that we reviewed, and that is indicated by the green on the chart. The information asset management category was the worst area, where all of the 5 entities were either partially compliant or not compliant. None of the 5 entities fully met the requirements related to information security incident management or technology recovery. However, 2 entities did come close, reaching a rating of mostly compliant. So we received the 6-month responses for entities A through E just last week, and I wanted to provide you that information today. So we asked that these entities should identify all areas in which they are non-compliant with the security requirements, not just those that we audited, but all 64 sections. And we asked A, C, D, and E to do that by August of 2016. Entity A reported back that they are partially implemented. They've basically provided us an inventory of the 64 sections of SAM and which areas they're compliant with, which ones they're not, and the dates that they hope to reach implementation. Overall, they see December 2017 as their target date for full compliance. Entity C has provided a detailed remediation plan with milestones and timeframes. From the documents provided, Entity C estimates an August 2016 compliance date. Entity D is also partially implemented, and we're a little bit more worried about this entity because in October, they began searching for qualified resources to perform this assessment. And as of January 20th, they hired 4 retired annuitants to come in and assess their current department-wide information security posture. They estimate that they will meet compliance by 2020. However, they noted in their report to us that this is it's contingent upon resource allocation and other factors. Entity E is also partially compliant, and they reported to us that they had their independent information security assessment done, and it was completed in February of this year. As a result of that assessment, they've developed a corrective action plan, an implementation plan, and a funding plan, and it has begun working on correcting priority action items. Based on this review, which I want to note they did find very beneficial, they estimate that their target completion date to be 2017. Entity B had the same recommendations as A through E, but we requested them to complete their remediation efforts by January 2016 because they were almost there when we did the review. And as of today, so as of December 31st, 2015, they are fully implemented. So I'm going to have you turn to page 2. And as the state auditor indicated, we also did a survey of the reporting entities. And basically, the background for this report, or the basis for this section of the report, was the October 2014 Status of Compliance with Security Reporting Activities report that the Department of Technology issued. In that report, we identified 114 entities that would become the basis for our review. Of those, we surveyed 101. We threw out 13 for various reasons, but the primary reason was that they had not completed a certification in 2014. Each of the 101 entities was asked to reply within 5 weeks to a detailed survey requesting them to identify their specific level of compliance to each of the 64 areas of the State Administrative Manual, Chapter 5300. They were asked to rate themselves in 5 separate categories: if they were fully compliant, mostly compliant, partially compliant, or not compliant. And we provided a definition for each so that they were to ensure consistency in reporting. And as you can see in Figure 3, what we found was that 73 of the 77 respondents had not achieved full compliance, and that nearly 50% of the survey respondents were not compliant or only partially compliant with the risk management area, and that 23 of the 77 had fully met the requirements related to technology recovery. We found this very surprising because this is an area that the technology department places a lot of focus on. They require departments to report their recovery plans every 2 years. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and turn over the presentation to Mr. Ward.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committees. My name is My name is Ben Ward. I was the supervisor on this audit. And in addition to the issues we found at the various state entities, I'll briefly touch on some of the challenges we identified in the Department of Technology's oversight of these entities. As the state auditor previously mentioned, in our survey, our survey included 41 entities that had certified to the Department of Technology that they're fully compliant. However, we found that 37 of them actually were not compliant. And if you turn to Figure 4 on the last page of your handout, this shows their estimated date for reaching full compliance. And you can note that 8 entities, although they certified in 2014 that they're fully compliant, they don't actually expect to reach full compliance until the year 2020 or later. As a result, we've made a couple recommendations to the legislature. The first was to require the technology department, that the legislature require the technology department to do targeted security assessments. And this recommendation was implemented by Madam Chair Irwin's bill AB 670 last year. The second recommendation to the legislature was to authorize the technology department to require the redirection of funds, subject to the Department of Finance's approval, to remediate information security weaknesses that were identified. And this is the result of some of these issues being outstanding for long periods of time, and no action has currently been taken on that recommendation. We also made a couple recommendations to the technology department. The first was to expand a pilot audit program that it had started. It was doing a pilot program where it looked at 8 entities to get a sense of where they truly were beyond the self-certification. And we recommended that they improve upon that program by developing an ongoing risk-based audit program. In response to our recommendation, the technology department has submitted a budget change proposal, and funding was included in the governor's proposed budget. Last, for the technology department, we recommended that they create a self-assessment tool that would ensure consistency and accuracy for the departments doing the assessments, so that when they certify, they can have a true picture and a consistent picture across all entities of where they really stand. In response to our recommendation, the technology department adopted an existing self-assessment form. However, the self-assessment form was based on federal standards, not the specific state standards. So there's a chance that an entity could perform the self-assessment and think they're really compliant when, in fact, they're not compliant with certain state standards. So in response to this concern, the technology department asserted that it's looking at implementing an automated self-assessment and reporting tool that they hope to roll out by December 2016. The last issue I'll briefly touch on is issues related to the Department of Technology's oversight. Specifically, in our survey, we found that more than half of the respondents said that the guidance and training from the technology department was insufficient, with more than a third saying that they didn't even understand all of the requirements that they're supposed to follow. One state entity did compliment the technology department on the quality of the training. They thought it was helpful. However, due to the size of the department and their location, it was very difficult for them to attend. So they asked that the technology department offer training in other formats, such as webinars, to allow more people to participate. So we made the recommendation that the technology department reach out to all entities to identify any areas of concern, make improvements to the standards as necessary, and adjust training where it's needed. Based on the 6-month response, the technology department has begun taking steps to adjust training, and they assert that they're researching alternate methods for outreach and for training so they can offer people to participate remotely. So that concludes my comments. We'd be happy to take any questions.